Hello and welcome to Posted. So, when we left off, Frost was having a horrible dream, thinking about winning an Academy Award or something for his poetry and looking out into a sea of post it note faces, with the exception of Rose, who apparently jumps from somewhere. So, kind of a scary dream. So, now we will continue with Posted. The next chapter is called The Rules. Bench's favorite color was orange. Oh, by the way, last chapter, Bench had a crazy good football game. So, forgot to include that. So now we'll start. The rules. Bench's favorite color was orange. This is probably not something I should know. Maybe if we'd been friends since kindergarten or were a couple of fourth graders swapping those secret password journals you can find in a bargain section of the bookstore, but it's not something that just came up naturally in conversation until I went into his bedroom for the first time and saw his tangerine walls and his blinding bright orange bedspread, making me wonder how in the world he ever managed to sleep at night. I know other things about Benj, things that even his parents probably don't, like he's a little ashamed of his dad because Mr. Jones used to be a runner, a track and cross country, and now he carries a serious gut and can barely huff it a mile. I also know Benj is terrified of letting his dad down, which is one of the reasons he tries to get straight A's and make it onto every team. I know it takes him twice as long to get through a book as me. I know he has an irrational fear of his teeth falling out due to the fact that when he was little, his grandmother's dentures accidentally came loose and dropped into her soup. I know that he hates it when Dee Dee shouts, "For the Shire," which is more often than necessary. And I know that even though he never came out and said it, even though he always seemed cool about it, he never liked his nickname. Because let's face it, nobody wants to spend their life just sitting around waiting for their chance to get in the game. We were playing at Wolf's this time. His dad was gone all weekend for a conference, which meant the house would be quiet for a change. We usually played Dee Dee at Dee Dee's house, but Wolf pointed out the injustice of making Dee Dee's parents foot the bill for snacks every time. I mean, everything they say about teenage boys and their appetites are totally true. We once polished off an entire family-sized pack of Oreos in one night. 48 cookies, minus the crumbs on the floor. Dee Dee was the only one who couldn't keep his dozen down and had to scramble for the toilet to make a deposit. These are the kind of stories we kept to ourselves. I showed up to Wolf's early, eager to get out of my own house and away from Mom, who was on the phone with the lawyer discussing alimony. She and Dad never talked to each other directly. They would email or text if necessary. She had no problem yelling at her lawyer, though. So I said I would just bike 3 miles to Wolf's house, and when I got there, his mother was trying to finish raking the front yard before it got dark. Hardly any leaves had fallen yet, but Mrs. Thompson was finicky about her lawn. Every hedge was perfectly trimmed, every tree was pruned, the grass had those diagonal mow lines that you see on golf courses. She asked me how I was doing, how was school, the usual. She asked about Mom. She didn't ask about Dad. Nobody ever asks about Dad. I had hoped that Wolf would be practicing so I could listen, but I spotted him in the garage instead. He was working on a plastic model of the battleship Arizona, the one that you could still see sunk at Pearl Harbor. I could smell the glue from the doorway. Piano was Wolf's passion, but he was almost as obsessed with those little plastic kits. When he wasn't stuck to his bench pounding out Beethoven, he was snapping pieces together, making sports cars or fighter jets that would take up shelves in his bedroom, the ones that didn't hold piano awards. And because all those were downstairs. He had Mustangs and F-15s and a German U-boat. He had a model of the Star Trek Enterprise and an Apollo lunar module. I remember the first time he showed me his room. It was like walking into a museum with fighter planes hanging from the ceiling and an aircraft carrier, also called the Enterprise, extending past both sides of his dresser. I'd never built one of those kits before. I would have glued my fingers together. Besides, I didn't have Wolf's patience. The first time I accidentally broke something off, I probably would have just tossed the entire thing in the trash. Dee Dee texted, "He's on his way," Wolf said, sensing me standing there. I nodded and walked around the garage until I spotted Wolf's brother's moped, half covered in a black tarp. Everybody is known for something. Wolf's older brother Simon was known for that bike, a Tau Tau 150cc cherry apple given to him as a consolation prize, the same time Wolf got his shiny black Baldwin sitting in the living room. Simon had just started middle school at the time, and Wolf said that everyone thought the moped was the coolest thing ever. Then Simon went to high school with juniors and seniors who drove things on 4 wheels that could actually hit the speed limit, and that moped suddenly wasn't so cool anymore, which explained why it was sitting in the corner of the garage. "Your brother ever planning to sell that thing?" I asked. Wolf shook his head, fidgeting with a rudder. "Are you kidding? He still loves that bike. He says I can have it when I turn 14, provided I give him $100. He still lets me ride it sometimes, though, if I clean his room and put away his laundry. I lifted the tarp a little. The bike looked like it was still in good shape. I'd probably clean Simon's room for a chance to take it around the block. Does he ever let you take it out on the highway? Open her up full throttle? I didn't know if you could open up a moped full throttle at all. Wolf laughed. Dude, full throttle on that thing is 50, and that's if you're going downhill. Uphill if you have to hop off and walk it. Oh, uphill you still have to hop off and walk it. He carefully put a radar dish in place, stepping back to admire his work. Did you ever hear anything from Bench? He said it casual, like he didn't care about the answer either way. And maybe he didn't, but I doubted it. It had been my job to call Bench and make sure he knew about tonight. It was 3 hours before he called me back, and he said he couldn't make it. He's going out to dinner with his family to celebrate the game. The catch, Wolf said. The catch, I repeated. That catch had actually made the paper. Local sports page, local paper, and only a 2-page article, but Bench's name was actually mentioned. It said, a miraculous 40-yard catch and run by Jeremiah Jones coming off the bench to seal the victory for the Falcons. I was sure his parents already had it clipped and framed. I kept our copy of the sports section just in case. I sensed there was something else Wolf wanted to say about the catch, but instead he just screwed the cap back on the glue and began putting the rest of the unused pieces back in the box. The battleship was still only half finished. It was in need of more guns and a whole lot of paint, but it looked pretty cool. Wolf's work always did. His loss, Wolf said. I'm sure we can tackle anything that pathetic excuse of a dungeon master throws at us. Well, just for that, I think I'll add more zombies. We both turned. Dee Dee stood in the doorway, an overstuffed Avenger's backpack threatening to topple him backwards. Your mom says if we bag those leaves, we can have pizza. I smiled and nodded. I'm not sure what Mr. Thompson's problem was. It seemed to me like Mrs. Thompson knew the way straight to a man's heart, so we went out and bagged those leaves. Afterward, Wolf's mom ordered an extra-large pepperoni and promised to leave us alone for the rest of the evening, retreating to her bedroom to enjoy some quiet time, which Wolf translated for us as reading a mystery novel and stalking people on Facebook. We thanked her for the pizza and promised not to break anything. How's it going? I whispered to Wolf as his mom went upstairs. She's been happy today, Wolf said with a shrug. I like it when they're happy, even if it's only for a small time. I didn't bother to say that with me, it was always one at a time. He was right, though. A happy parent was better than a miserable 2 parents, most days. While we waited for the pizza, Dee Dee unzipped his pack and pulled out the library of manuals he brought, complete with maps and traps and cardboard tokens representing everything from zombie rats to vampire lords. He unloaded a small hoard of dice that skittled across the table. Wolf and I picked up a handful and challenged each other for the highest number. Dee Dee yelled at us to leave the dice alone. This wasn't rock, paper, scissors, he told us. Dungeons and Dragons was serious business. I told him he should be extra thankful that he has friends like us, especially since he forgot Pringles. The doorbell rang and Dee Dee and I both looked at the clock. We'd only called for the pizza 10 minutes ago. Maybe Bench got out of dinner, I said. Yeah, maybe, Dee Dee said. Wolf smiled as he stood up. From his seat, Dee Dee had the best angle of the front hall, and I watched his expression shift from curious to confused. I spun around to see who was standing there, although I already should have guessed. Greetings, O Dungeony ones, Rose Holland called from the front door. I come bearing gifts. She held up a bag of Funyuns and 2-liter bargain brand red cream soda and smiled. Dee Dee's mouth hung open, and I kept mine shut. Wolf took the snacks and gave Rose a hug, the second hug I'd seen him give in 2 days. I wasn't sure you were going to make it, he said, escorting her into the kitchen. Are you kidding? Hanging out with 3 world-class geekazoids like you on a Saturday night? How could a girl say no to that? I could think of approximately 300 girls at Brayton Middle School who would have said no to that. They actually wouldn't have said no. They would have said something more like, are you kidding? Or seriously? In fact, I couldn't think of another kid in the entire school who would have given the offer to sit around with the 3 of us and roll for saving throws a second thought. But Rose was obviously an exception. Is that the pizza guy? Wolf's mom called downstairs. There was a pause, and Wolf looked at the 2 of us as if he expected us to answer, but instead he just yelled back to Mom, No, Mom, just a friend. It's important to keep some things to yourself. If Jamie Juarez could have kept his superfluous nipple a secret, I'm sure he would have. It would have saved him some grief. Same goes for Catherine McKinney's habit of chewing her toenails, or Daniel P.'s unfortunate long history of bedwetting that earned him the name P. Diddley. I mean, that's what happened was when people find out. Dungeons and Dragons was kind of like that. Forget that half the kids in the school probably went around slaying dragons and slashing loot on their PlayStations. It's different when you have a dice to roll. It's all about degrees. Mention you like to play board games, and you're probably okay. But if you break out the monster manual and start talking about the difference between 5th edition and 4th edition rules, you might as well give up on ever having a date to the 8th grade dance. That's why I was a little bit surprised to see Rose at the door. Dee Dee pulled Wolf aside, and the three of us had a quick huddle. This is not going to work, Dee Dee explained. You are all at level 7. If she comes in now, she will throw everything off balance, and she will muck it up. It was a good excuse, much better than saying Wolf had crossed the line inviting someone without permission, someone who probably knew nothing about constitution checks and critical hits, somebody we would have to teach everything to. Eating lunch with us was one thing, this was another. I don't want to ruin your game, Rose said, eavesdropping. If it's a problem, I will sit and watch. Sit and watch? Who in their right mind would want to sit and watch three guys play Dungeons and Dragons? It's not a problem, Wolf said, breaking the huddle prematurely. We'll bump up your stats a little bit. You'll be fine, right, Dee Dee? Wolf and Dee Dee just stared at each other. It was up to the dungeon master. It was Wolf's house, but this was Dee Dee's game. Wolf got to decide if she stayed, but Dee Dee got to decide if she played. I was just glad nobody was looking at me. She'll need to make a character, Dee Dee sighed, meaning there were 4 of us playing like always, but not the same 4. We took our seats around Wolf's scarred kitchen table. Rose sat between Wolf and me, but sat closer to him. Dee Dee patiently explained the absolute least she had to know to get started, while I poured myself a cup of the soda. You're going to need to choose an avatar, Dee Dee told her. He had a whole trove of plastic figures. He picked out the tallest, a war chief, who was hulking and muscular, holding a giant axe. Maybe this one, he said. Rose rifled through the box. Who is this little guy, she asked, holding up a short, pudgy-looking figure about half the size of Dee Dee's. That would be a gnome, Dee Dee said. They're good at making things. Like origami, Wolf said. Oh, I'll be him then, Rose said. What's his name? You get to make up his name. I told her you get to make up everything. Name, profession, backstory, all of it. That's the best part. Really. I mean, at least I thought so. Of course, maybe that was just the poet in me talking. So you're saying I could be anything I want? Within reason, Wolf said. And within a roll of the dice, Dee Dee added. Well, in that case, she said, putting the tiny gnome in front of her, my name will be Moose. We all looked at each other. You could hear the carbonation popping in our cups. I was no stranger to tense silences. I once witnessed my mother yelling at my father in the middle of a Walgreens, loud enough for everyone in the pharmacy to hear, including the guy at the drive-thru. The quiet that followed that incident was not quite as awkward as this. Rose shrugged off our stares. What, you think I'm going to let some stupid name get to me? My name is Moose Wrathbringer, and I am a spellcasting ninja with a history of carrying out covert assassinations for top secret guilds. Or I don't know, something like that. And we'll stop there. See you next time.